We had been planning this mountain hike for a long time. Our group consisted of 5 people: me, my friend Edward, his younger sister Clara, our companion Oliver, and our experienced guide, Sebastian. Sebastian promised us breathtaking views, and we, inspired by his stories, eagerly anticipated this adventure. The ascent began early in the morning. We walked along a narrow path, surrounded by dense forest, the cold mountain air refreshing us. By noon, we reached our first campsite, where Sebastian warned us to be particularly cautious from that point onward. The weather in the mountains is unpredictable, and the trails can be treacherous, he said. None of us took his words too seriously, as the day was clear, and everyone was in high spirits. As the sun began to set, we decided to camp near a small stream. Sebastian told us the next part of the trail would be challenging, so it was best to rest and get a good night's sleep. We lit a campfire, had dinner, and started sharing stories. At one point, Clara suggested we talk about mysteries, and Oliver, a fan of scary tales, began recounting stories about strange disappearances in the mountains. We laughed, but soon the atmosphere around us felt oddly heavy. Even the forest seemed to fall silent. By midnight, we all retreated to our tents. I lay in my sleeping bag, beginning to doze off, when I suddenly heard a sound, a mix between a whisper and the wind howling. I dismissed it as my imagination and closed my eyes. But a few minutes later, the sound came again, this time closer. I stepped out of the tent and saw Edward standing nearby, listening intently. "Did you hear that too?" he asked quietly. We woke Sebastian, and he told everyone to gather by the campfire. The fire was nearly out, and the sounds were growing louder. Sebastian looked tense. He said it could be the wind, but his expression betrayed his unease. Suddenly, we heard heavy footsteps coming from the forest. Everyone froze. In the beam of the flashlight, we caught sight of a strange shadow flickering between the trees. Sebastian raised his hand, signaling us to stay silent, and took a step toward the forest. The shadow disappeared as suddenly as it had appeared, but then Clara screamed. We turned and saw her tent torn, and she was standing a short distance away, trembling with fear. "It was right next to me," she whispered. Sebastian decided it wasn't safe to stay. We quickly packed up and began descending, sticking closely together. At one point, Oliver stopped and said, "I can't take this anymore. It's just stress. We're scaring ourselves." And then, right in front of us, something lit up on the trail with a bright, blinding light. We stood frozen, unable to believe our eyes. The light was too intense to make out any details, but the feeling was strange, a mix of fear and an inexplicable calm. When the light disappeared, Sebastian urged us to move faster. We reached the foot of the mountains only at dawn, exhausted and frightened. Later, Sebastian suggested it could have been some natural phenomenon, but I saw doubt in his eyes. A few months later, I decided to return to those mountains to investigate. I found no trace of what we had seen, but the feeling of being watched never left me. This experience changed all of us. We learned to treat nature with greater respect, recognizing its power and mysteries. I still don't know what it was, an illusion, a natural occurrence, or something else entirely. But one thing I know for sure, there's more to the mountains than meets the eye.